Hello everybody, welcome to Carried Away Travels. I'm so glad that you stopped by to watch this video today to learn more about the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. I'm sure you've heard of the Giant's Causeway long before this video because it is widely known as one of the most beautiful places not just in Northern Ireland, but the world. And having been there in person, I can testify it lives up to the hype. This whole area is just absolutely gorgeous in a way that really does feel otherworldly. Like looking at it, I know that it's a natural area. It was caused by lava flows, and the colors are pretty typical to this part of Ireland. But when it's all together, it really does look like something from a fairy tale, or as some people said, aliens came and put it together, created these columns. It is just so unique and distinct. It almost doesn't feel real. And that just adds to the magic of this whole thing. And that's part of the reason why this whole area is surrounded by myths. Before I visited the Giant's Causeway, I didn't actually know why it was called the Giant's Causeway. I assumed it was just because everything was giant. But turns out the reason it's named the Giant's Causeway is because of a very popular local legend called the Legend of Finn McCool. We actually visited the Giant's Causeway with a tour group called Finn McCool Tours. And so they were great at sharing this story with us. So I'm going to give you the short version. So, long time ago, there was an Irish giant named Finn McCool. And there was another giant across the sea over in Scotland called Benandonner. Now, Benandonner made a claim to Ireland and said that he was going to come take it. And Finn McCool was not okay with that. He was not McCool with that. I'm so sorry. So, in his anger, Finn McCool started to throw boulders into the Irish Sea to create a bridge so he could go over to Scotland and confront Benandonner. But when he got almost to land, he saw Benandonner walking around and was like, "Whoa, that's a big giant." And then he ran back to Ireland and was like, "Okay, I can't fight this guy. We're going to trick him." So he leaves this bridge for Benandonner to find. Benandonner comes over to Ireland, and Finn McCool disguises himself as a baby and has his wife come into this grand scheme and tell Benandonner, "Oh yeah, this is Finn McCool's child. Look how big this baby is." And again, Finn McCool's a giant. So Benandonner's like, "Whoa, that's a big baby. The father must be ginormous." And he chickens out and he runs back to Scotland, never bothers Ireland again. So it is a very humorous tale. There's a much longer version you can look up online if you want. But that is why it's called the Giant's Causeway, because supposedly these giants used it for an almost battle. So there are other myths surrounding it. There's also a version that says Finn McCool built it to go find or to reach his love across the ocean, but he was so exhausted when he got there that he died. That one's sad, so I like the first version a lot better. From an actual scientific standpoint, and if you've been watching my videos lately, you know how much I love science. The basalt columns that are on the causeway are actually the result of lava. A very long time ago, lava came up through cracks in the earth, and then when it cooled, it formed these incredible hexagonal columns. And so when you look at the causeway, you look at these pillars and these columns, that's one of the things that makes it look so unreal, is just how geometrical and consistent these shapes are. It's just amazing. It's also really cool to see how they create some waves by the seashore, and then there's these super tall ones up on the cliffs. It's just amazing to think that something like that could happen in nature, but it's absolutely beautiful. And just a fun fact, there's about 40,000 of these columns all over the causeway. Some of them are flat, some of them are really tall, some of them are more gray, and some are more white. But it's just an absolutely spectacular thing to see with your own eyes. Now, we actually got to see some more basalt columns in Iceland at the Reynisfara Black Sand Beach. There's a bunch of them there, and they're very cool. And Iceland also has a few other places, from what I understand, where you can see these columns just because there's so much volcanic activity. But this is kind of a unique thing to see in other parts of the world, like Northern Ireland. All right, so now that we've covered the legends and the actual science, let's talk about what you can do at the Giant's Causeway, because it's not just a pretty face. There's a lot you can do here. And we had such an amazing time exploring. Now, when you first get to the Giant's Causeway parking lot, you have a couple different options. One, you can walk straight down to the seashore and see the columns there. You can go into the visitor center, which does have an additional fee, and I did not have the time to go in, so unfortunately I cannot speak to how that goes, but I've heard it's very nice. Third option is you can go up the hill and take the path along the seaside cliffs and get these incredible overhead views of the Giant's Causeway and the cliffs, and that is what I recommend you start with. When I was reading up on this before visiting, it seems like most people just go down to the columns by the shore, and I get it, they're cool, but these trails along the cliffs were some of the most beautiful views I saw all of last year, and that's including Rocky Mountain National Park and the Galapagos Islands. These views, even on a cloudy day, were so stunning. You can look down over these cliffs, and the shoreline is made up of these black and white boulders. It's really crazy to see them in these kind of lines, and they're so contrasting in colors. Then the cliffs are covered in vibrant green and orange colors. I guess the moss on these, it's a really cool contrast. You can see these videos here. It's absolutely amazing. And then you can see these columns as well, breaking up the earth. It's just so beautiful. So I highly recommend you walk along those trails. There are some stairs and it does rain a lot here. So just watch your step, be careful as you walk down these stone steps. But this trail is absolutely stunning. It'll take you past some sheep in a field up at the top, and it's just really relaxing. It takes about 45 minutes if you're stopping and taking your time, which we did. We really wanted to enjoy it. But then you can go down and kind of work your way towards the columns. However, before you just beeline for the columns, I will also say when you come down those stairs, there's going to be a point where you can go left towards the main columns area on the seashore, or you can go right and there's like a bend. I would recommend going right. You're going to pass what's known as the pipe organs, which is this super cool basalt column formation that's like right into the side of the mountain, and they just go up and up and up and up. It's crazy. They're so tall. So that's a really cool photo op there, and it's just really interesting to see. Those were the tallest columns you could see like all of them of, if that makes sense. So the ones on the seashore, a lot of them are kind of ripples, and so there are ones that are really tall and you can climb up, but you can't see the whole column. And these ones you can see them all the way up. It was so cool. And then if you keep going down, there's just a really beautiful scenic point kind of on this peninsula, and then it cuts back around the rock. There's just this really beautiful view of the ocean and more of the coastline around that bend. It will only take you like 10 minutes to detour, but I think that was totally worth our time when we were there just because it was so pretty. Now, when you're done up on the cliffs, the path will gradually lead you down to the coastline, and you'll get a really good look at the most popular part of the Giant's Causeway. The rather rustic path on the mountain is going to turn into a much wider paved path as well, and this is where it gets really busy. You are free to go off the path and walk on the rocks, but beware, it does get busy. It can be a little steep, and it's also kind of slippery because it rains. There's seawater, and so I would just really caution you to watch your step. A lot of the columns were kind of dipped at the top, and so they had some standing water, and you just want to be really careful here. But walk all over here and explore. You can go all the way out to the water. There's one particular hump that you can climb all the way up, and it's got a really beautiful view. You can just spend a lot of time exploring here and taking a ton of cool pictures. There's just so many fun points, but just keep in mind, chances are you will be sharing this area with a lot of tourists. And as someone who was there as a tourist and got frustrated, I would implore you to be respectful of other people and, one, not block the safest path up the rocks. If it looks like it's hard to climb the rocks at another place, please don't stop in the middle of that place and have a picnic and force everyone else to risk their lives to go around you. Also, just, don't walk in front of other people's pictures. Like, just be a mindful tourist. I understand that there are areas where it just gets busy and there's not much you can do, but you personally can choose to be a considerate visitor here and make other people's visits more enjoyable as well. So even though it's crowded, just be aware of your surroundings and the other people there. You will have a good time. The other people will also have a better time for that choice you have made. This area is undoubtedly the highlight of the Giant's Causeway. It's why so many people are here, but there is still more you can see. Depending on how long you have to spend here, make sure you carve out a fairly decent amount of time to continue the loop back up to the visitor center. We ended up rushing just a little bit because our tour only gave us about 2 hours to spend here, and we had so much fun up on the cliffs. But the path back to the visitor center is so beautiful as well. It's not quite the cliff top views, but you just get such a gorgeous panorama of more of these cliffs and those bright colors, and then the water's right there. It's just a really nice walk. It is also a little bit uphill, so if you don't want to be out of breath, I would recommend you set aside the time to take a leisurely stroll back up to the visitor center or wherever you're departing from. Now, if you're staying in Belfast or somewhere near here, this trip is really a no-brainer. Like, you should definitely come here. We actually ended up visiting the Giant's Causeway from Dublin, which meant we had a very long day. We spent a lot of time on the road, but I felt like it was very worth it. And we also ended up choosing this over the Cliffs of Moher. Now, I kind of explained this in a video I did about this full day tour that we took. I'd encourage you to check that out if you're interested. It was a full day with Finn McCool tours from Dublin to Belfast, and we visited the Giant's Causeway, Dunluce Castle, Carrick-a-Reid Bridge, and the Dark Hedges. So we packed in a lot. This was the main attraction though. And the reason we chose to come here for the day was because I did a lot of research, and what I found was when you visit someplace like the Cliffs of Moher from Dublin, you typically arrive at like the worst possible time of day to actually get nice views. It's usually either foggy or the sun is right in your eyes, and you don't get those beautiful views that you always see on the internet and social media because you're there at the wrong time of day, and all there is to do there is a short walking path and a visitor center. So a lot of people online were saying that the Giant's Causeway makes a much better trip from Dublin. So we went for it, and I was so happy. Now you can clearly see in my videos, it was a cloudy day. There was sunshine. It wasn't really raining on us till the very end, but it wasn't like we had the best weather, but it was still beautiful. It didn't matter that there were clouds because there was so much color and other natural beauty going on that you didn't even need a nice day to enjoy it. And we just had such a wonderful time here. So if you do happen to be staying in Dublin, Ireland, I would recommend this as a day trip. You will be crossing over into the UK. So keep in mind, you can't use euros here. If you're coming over, you will need, I just used a credit card. It made things very easily. But I would also, again, recommend this if you're staying in Dublin just as much as I would if you're staying in Belfast. To wrap things up, I just want to give you a few tips on gear and clothing items for this particular trip. Now, as I mentioned, there are several places where it can be slippery or you're on a dirt path. So I really recommend good shoes with solid grip on them. I wore my Tau sneakers. I wore those the whole time in Ireland. Those work perfectly fine for me, but a good hiking shoe wouldn't be a bad choice. Something waterproof, especially since there will be that standing water in certain places, just a good idea. So good footwear. I recommend a packable rain jacket. Again, it didn't start raining until the end of our trip, but I was glad I had my rain jacket. The one I have off of Amazon was probably around $20, and it just squeezes up into a little ball and fits wherever there's space in my bag. Don't forget water as well, and you might want to snack while you're there. There is a restaurant up near the visitor center area if you want a full meal, but we just took some protein bars just so we could get some energy after all our hiking. And that just about concludes our video for today. Once again, if you are interested in learning more about our Finn McCool tour that took us from Dublin to the Giant's Causeway in Belfast, I have a full video and blog post on that with just the full breakdown and pricing and time frame and all of that. I encourage you to check that out. I also have more videos on things to do in Dublin if that's where you're starting from. If you are looking for more information about the Giant's Causeway or want a quick reference guide to the information discussed in this video, I do have a full written blog post on my blog, Carried Away Travels, at cochranewriting.com. You can go check that out, and there is some additional information there as far as FAQs and such. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up before you go, and if you have questions or comments, please drop those down below. I love to hear from you all, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to Carried Away Travels so you can follow along with my adventures and get more helpful videos like this in the future. Thank you once again for being here, and happy travels.